Well, welcome. It's a show that I hadn't thought about for about 10 years. Our favorite son from the Heights is transitioning. Somebody who's done so much and helped us in the town with so many things. But why don't we start with an introduction if there is somebody who doesn't know you?
Well, Al, I think you know my name's John Fernandes, and currently I serve as state representative for the towns of Milford, Hopedale, Mendon, and Medway.
So now, as a politician, you said...
Who says I'm a politician?
Well, it doesn't seem like it, because back when you said I'm going to serve for about 10 years and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
How many years has it been?
It'll be 10 years.
And what are you doing now?
I'm going to stop serving.
Can you be a politician and keep all your promises?
I think the vast majority do, but like everything else in life, we hear about the controversial and the provocative. We don't hear about the steady and the mundane. So,
well, for many of us, most of us, thank you for helping so much for 10 years.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoy it. It truly is a bit of a bittersweet decision, as with many things in life. The bitter part of it is that I'll be giving up something I really enjoy doing. I mean, I've reached a point where, particularly the job I have as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is sort of this blending of two lifelong careers, 35, 34 years in the law, and on and off for over 44 years in government, and even my political science degree. Who uses their college degree, right? All came together in a really blended way, and I came to recognize it during the course of this term, because as any variety of legislation would come up that affected justice issues, civil law issues, probate issues, almost any kind of legal issue, it seems that I had some personal knowledge to draw upon, both in terms of what the issue would be like to deal with and how that legislation either made sense or didn't, but also, you know, able to deal with the variety of can't you see I'm right attitudes about why government should do something in particular, but why what they wanted to do, even if they truly believed it themselves, didn't see any weaknesses, why I knew from my many years working in government that compromises needed to be made, collaboration needed to be gained, other people needed to be brought in, changes needed to be made, and maybe incremental changes as opposed to the big bang that the legislation might have. So in that respect, it's bitter because I really enjoyed doing that, and it was fun. It was hard work, but it was fun. I mean, the sweet is that, you know, maintaining my law practice and trying to do this job as well, and I cut my law practice back dramatically over the years, and more so as I took on more responsibility, but still, it's still a staple of my life, and really has been the thing that has allowed me to, you know, to gain certain things for my family and myself, and it's also very fulfilling just to do that. So the combination of the two was just taking such time that, and I think I talked about this, but I was running for re-election. You know, I said I should do one more term at this judiciary thing. It's something that doing one term is almost unheard. No, it's not almost unheard of. It's unheard of. And then, you know, the very fateful thing of my mother-in-law's passing, and my inability during that week, while we were doing getting through her illness, doing the arrangements, her last illness, and getting the family in and doing all those things, there wasn't a single day during that week that I could actually spend entirely with my wife, because something was drawing me away, in spite of the best efforts of my staff at the law office or staff in Boston to keep me from having to do anything. You know, my own sense of responsibility said, I got to go take care of that. I got to go deal with that. And I'm not saying it was, you know, overwhelming, and I'm not whining or complaining or trying to even sound more important than it is. It's just that the combination of these two things, they're high pressure and intense and important things to the people that I serve in both responsibilities. And it struck me that, you know, I don't really think I should do this for 2 more years. I think the timing, to the point I said I'd do 10 years, I kind of had this premonition then that would be the right time, and that convinced me it was. So.
Well, the suite I knew wasn't going to be from Jennifer's point of view, saying she'll have you home more often.
No, I didn't. Her bittersweet may be the other way around.
I was going to say, okay.
Yeah. But it's been, you know, it's been a really nice ride through this, and I can't thank people enough for the way in which they have received both my service over the years, placed their trust in me, and the really what feels like sincere and kind things that people have said in the last 6 months since I made this announcement. It's not that people don't say nice things while you're serving.
Sure.
Obviously, help somebody, they'll say something nice, and you know, people will occasionally say, geez, I'm really glad you're the rep, or whatever the case may be. But the number of people who went out of their way to, you know, say, I'm really sorry you're leaving, but, you know, happy for you if it's the right thing down the stretch, and the recognitions have been very fulfilling and rewarding in some respect. I mean, I'm not, you know, sometimes I step outside of it and say, I feel like I'm walking through my own receiving line here. You know,
not dead yet.
Not dead yet, still here. But, you know, putting that part of it aside, it's really nice. The people have been very kind.
And I remember 10 years ago when you came on, my God, 10 years ago, first thing you said was, well, somebody asked me, how did I feel like the only conservative walking in? And back then you said, if I'm a conservative, what does that make Dick Moore a Republican?
Yeah. It's, you know, we have a, I think people elect a person and expect them to go in and do what they think is right. So they're trusting your judgment. And sometimes it is about one issue. You know, there may be people who would not vote for me if I didn't take on the transgender question, and there'll be people who will never vote for me again if I do. So those are, you know, you put those aside because those are really minority members of either
isn't
side.
that really more of a national trend?
Oh, well, no, but that's always been the case. There's always been some hot button issues that certain people will say, I like you, but I can't vote for you because you do this. The vast majority of people are in the pot that says, look, I know I'm not going to agree with you all the time, but I want to know you prepare. I want to know you balance things.
Do I feel like you're
thinking, and I trust you.
Yeah.
I trust you. And ultimately, to be successful, a person's vision of what they think they ought to do and then how they act has to generally be in line with their constituency, or that trust is eventually going to break. The things you do that they don't agree with will start to outweigh the things you do that they agree with, because people don't always remember, oh, you did this, or you did this, or you did this. They remember, you know, you did something nice there, you did something nice there, you did something, so I like and trust you. And I remember you did something I didn't like, but on balance, I like mostly what you do. And that's how people stay elected. So I think, my point is, you know, we live in a district that's always been somewhat socially tolerant and progressive, but fiscally conservative. And so I've obviously tried to reflect that because I feel that that's where I am as well. Over time, and I think because of the twin sisters of the, I think, unfair impact of illegal immigration on our district, our area, particularly Milford. When I say unfair, based upon what happens throughout the country, although we're seeing on the national stage a lot more people are upset than maybe politicians realized about the fact that they haven't figured out how to get this under control. But it's affected our district, certainly in our community of Milford, more than some others, and that's had a sort of impact on how socially progressive people are. And the recession, I think, hurt. I think it definitely hurt people's social progressive. It was sort of like, look, get it under control, think a little more clearly, be more focused on the big issues and not so many of these peripheral issues.
I mean, things like the recession, John, and immigration, can they really pin it on you?
Oh, no, but it's how you react to it. And so people will want to know what your thoughts are and that your thoughts reflect theirs. But what I'm saying is it's not so much they pin it on me as it changes people's own view of what the world should look like. And if my decisions start to fall outside their view, they're going to lose faith in me. But I don't think that's been the case.
Whether I agree with your immigration policies or totally disagree, last time I looked, we can't deport people to Rhode Island or Bellingham or, you know, it's not like, I know Milford's the center of the universe, but we still have to listen to national immigration policy.
Sure, but we do control certain things. So we're left to deal with the impacts of that problem. We don't control. It's a preemptive situation. The federal government has exclusive jurisdiction over who gets into this country and how. But the impacts of that decision, those kinds of decisions, fall upon states and then fall upon local communities. So Milford took steps on its own, the bylaw that we passed, the occupancy bylaw, working with ICE, doing some other things, trying to get our arms around the impact on our school system. Those are all things that got done locally. At the state level, we have to look at issues like driver's licenses, good or bad, because there are arguments in both directions. Benefits, which ones can we deny, which ones can we not deny because they come through the federal government? How do we tighten things up in that regard? How do we support our schools? Because that's a partnership between us and the community. And these public safety, these education, these social welfare issues become things people want to know that your thinking is on the same line of thinking as them. And I've always tried to do that because I think my thinking has been in line with the people in the community, that I can't become mad about it. People can become mad about it and talk to me that they're mad about it, but I can't become mad about it. I have to be effective, reasoned, and rational in the way I present things in Boston, and I think I've done that on that issue and others. So it's just, you know, in terms of reflecting the population that we represent, you know, I feel like there's been a transition, but I've been able to hold true with that.
Has the district or the area changed, in your view?
Well,
over the last 10 years?
Sure. I mean, every community is in flux. Some communities are growing. You know, they get more housing in them. Hopedale, Mendon.
But when I moved
Medway.
back, I think there were 12 Republicans in Massachusetts. And
there aren't a whole lot more Republicans in Massachusetts today than there were. What you've got is you've got a shift of some of the independents to a more conservative, thus Republican point of view. So when they go in to vote, you're finding more of that.
And I've always said
in our district as well.
I'm happy, I'm proud of the fact that I cannot tell a real difference between a liberal Massachusetts Republican and a conservative Massachusetts Democrat. You know, you always talk about the 20% fringe, which scare the heck out of me, whether they're ultra left or ultra right. But the middle seems to be a lot more, in my mind, reasonable in Massachusetts than when I look out either California or some of the square states. Yeah,
look, I mean, you know, I do a fundraiser, I do a rally, I do something. You go in and you ask people what their leanings are or what their even party registration is, and there are a lot of Republicans and conservative or moderate, particularly business people, who would typically vote Republican, who vote for me. There are a lot of people who say, you're the only Democrat I vote for, you know. And I do think it's about conveying to people a sensibility about decision making. So if you campaign as a Democrat, or if you campaign as a Republican, and thereby trap yourself inside of what people view, even unfairly or fairly, those two labels to mean, then it's going to be harder to work with that middle, because what the middle wants, in my experience, is somebody who will be pragmatic. You know, I tell the story, Catherine Coyne. The bell's rung. People expect that the fight of last week is over. So on November 9th this year, which happens to be my anniversary, but on November 9th this year, the public expects, typically, and particularly the middle, we're going to put aside our differences. You fought your fight. Campaign's over. You are now the 435 members of the House, the 100 members of the Senate, and the President of the United States, and the same thing, Governor, and on down. We now expect you to work together.
And I think that's some of the frustration, because there's no secret, I was not an Obama supporter. But the day he became our president, I have to hope he'll be successful.
A failure of an elected official is a failure of all of us.
You know, I'm looking at, we're in a rowboat, and I don't like you. I'm going to drill a hole on my side of the rowboat. How does that help?
Well, how do you work together is the question. You know, when Ryan, you know, defeated Dick Moore, my first phone call was to Ryan. You know, look, campaign's over. We have to work together. People expect that. And that's the way it's going to be. You don't cross me, I don't cross you. We may have differences on pieces of legislation and policy. We can deal with those differences legitimately without.
Dick Moore had that too.
Yeah, without trying. Yeah, we can do that without trying to spot each other in the press or someplace else. But there's more we have to work in common on than we have differences on. And part of that is you have to get other people in government to trust you. It's not just getting the constituency to trust you. People have to know that your agenda is really the agenda of just getting things done so that you can work together. I mean, I've had an excellent working relationship with Governor Baker. Karen Polito and I were friends from serving in the legislature together. None of that changed. They don't at all, I don't think, view me, and could not have over the last 2 years, as somebody that's looking to undercut their success politically, because I don't do that. And to their credit, they've never tried to do that with me. Outside the campaign.
But that's one of the things that you feel good about. When you look at the relationship between Obama and the Republicans, it almost feels personal. You know, that some of the votes against Obama, didn't matter what position he was going to take, they were going to undermine him.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the actions he's taken, he basically went around Congress.
And that's the unfortunate reality of the federal level. So it's hard in 2-year cycles, you think, sometimes to put politics aside, but it really isn't if you want to, and we demonstrate that at the state level all the time. So we run in 2-year cycles, but the governor runs in 4-year cycles, and so does the president. So there's plenty of opportunity to put politics aside and work together, as, you know, Charlie Baker and Karen Polito and a number of members of his secretariat that I've worked with do wonderfully. I mean, some of these people have become friends over the last couple of years, and that's because we've worked together so well. It can be that way. I mean, when a bell rings and the campaign starts, maybe there'll be differences that come out between us that get exposed in the public. But at the federal level, they never stop. November 9th's not going to be anything new.
Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, I always admired.
Go out and have a beer.
Well, that was it. I
That's
mean,
what
you
gotta
can't,
do.
in my mind, find two people more diametrically opposed in their politics. But it seemed that there was a respect. So when the bell rang, okay.
You know, there was Jack Davern, you know, God rest his soul, was a very successful person in getting the Republicans to work together with him. His approach always was, the fight's on the floor. Let's go grab a beer.
Right.
And be friends. And there was a long tradition, when I got onto the school committee in Milford many years ago, there was a long tradition where the members, not always of a commonality of you know, cliques within the community, would always go out for a beer after their meetings. And you know, you think, oh, well, what are they doing? Well, what they're doing is they're putting aside the differences on the floor and going down to a particular place, having a beer and talking about their families.
Right.
And their kids, and realizing they're all human, and you don't dehumanize somebody that you're dealing with.
But isn't that, I mean, when you think of the black ads that come out, right? I don't understand how, on a local level, you throw a black ad in front of me about Elizabeth Warren, I say, who? I've read about her, I've seen her on TV. But you throw a black ad about John Fernandes, my mother says, John number 30.
Yeah, it doesn't work locally. Never has.
She still remembers you as your family from the Heights, number 30-something, and she'll always call you John number 30-something. It's always going to be that. Mm-hmm. So saying he's a bad person, to me, doesn't work, because you're here, you're in front of me. And I sit there and say, I may disagree with you, but you know, good
no, it doesn't work.
Good kids.
Yeah, it doesn't work on a local level, and sometimes people think, well, if it's successful up there, it must be, I can take it here and I can take it here, but things don't always translate. But I think more than that, what I'm talking about is at the federal level, people are, November 9th will begin the campaign for 2 years from now in Congress and 4 years from now for the presidency. It's absurd. And so every decision they make internally is guided by this next election cycle, which is not the way government should work. And when you dehumanize your opponent, when you turn them into a cardboard cutout, and when you don't spend time with them socializing, it's easier to do that. You will simply never get anything done, because the people who created our government were wise enough to put redundancies in place, and the absolute necessity for collaboration, such that you can't get anything done if you don't work with people, and you can't work with people if you don't respect them at a minimum and hopefully even like them, even though they disagree with you. Congress and the president. And it's a fatal kind of disheartening existence at that level, particularly when I know, as a person who's been around this business for 45 years, that that's not the way it's always been.
Sure.
And particularly as a person who's been in this for the last 10 years and worked on a local level in the same way, that it doesn't have to be that way, and you really can't collaborate with people you don't agree with on all issues and who come from a, quote, different party and be successful. Brad Jones, the leader in the House of the Republican Party, is one of the nicest guys in the world, and we trust each other a lot, and we talk a lot about issues, and I trust what he tells me is what he sees can happen with a particular legislation, and vice versa.
Realistically, you look nationally, but even locally, representative from Springfield and out west is going to have different needs than the one from Boston or you.
I'm sure.
And if you don't know these people, regardless of red, blue, purple, how do you compromise? You know, when somebody comes and says, John, I really need this one for my people because, and you sit there and say, okay, but you supported me here when you came through for Milford, Mendon, Hopedale, 1 Street and Medway. So I'll give. And in the future, when I need help, I can go to you and say, like you needed the water rights, Bill, I need this.
It's about collaboration. You know, you got to get to know people and be collaborative with them. So, you know, long and the short of it is, it's been a fun and fulfilling ride for me.
Now, do you see the districts going more conservative, more liberal?
My district, I think it's evident from the results over the last 10 years that the senatorial district had been a Democratic senator, maybe a Republican in heart, 2 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Today, it's a Republican senator, 5 Republicans, and 1 Democrat. So, you know, there's been a sort of a wave across this area, the Blackstone Valley, which has been more conservative. And I think the answer to that in some respects is there's always been a sort of Reagan-type Democrat inside Dick Moore's Ryan Fatman senatorial district.
A conservative-type Democrat.
Conservative-type Democrat inside the district, who some of those folks have just gone Republican and ain't coming back. But there's also been a lot of growth across that area that brings in a different type of Republican or conservative independent, and that's the sort of business person, you know, the people who are buying larger homes and more expensive homes that work in the tech industries where they've never seen a union and don't want a union, and they don't understand what maybe those kinds of things have meant in the past. So a district that had been, you know, a conservative Democratic district didn't take much to sort of shift it to a
liberal,
not a liberal Republican, but a progressive Republican. I don't think you can be a true Tea Partier in this district and succeed.
See, and there I'd agree with you. An uber conservative or an uber liberal, I don't think would work in this area.
It's still, you call yourself a Republican or call yourself a Democrat. You have to sort of sit in the pragmatic middle in our district to be successful, because that's where the issues come to rest. So, you know, when I went to work on the gun bill, you know, who do I go sit down with? I go sit down with the Rod and Gun Club guys. And much of what we discussed about the practicalities of implications of that bill made made its way into my thinking, and as a consequence, because I was in that small group of people writing the bill, made its way into the bill. Either things left the bill or things came in differently than they would have come in otherwise. So these are the people you turn to. I mean, you turn to these people to find out, but that's reflective of where the district was. The district wasn't, you know, all Second Amendment or all put the guns away. It's sort of like, look, there's a healthy respect for the Second Amendment and how people use guns. There's a risk to our communities from access to guns. How are we going to close these loops? And our guys in the Rod and Gun Clubs are perfectly happy being in that centerpiece area that says, look, we understand you can have, Supreme Court has said, even though the Second Amendment exists, you can have reasonable restrictions. And they're all for being careful. You know?
Yeah. And you know, you look at the Second Amendment. I'm one of those people. I'm a gun owner.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't shot a gun in a decade, but I have my shotgun from when I was a kid on Water Street in Milford, and I got my first shotgun.
And I'm presuming that you have it properly locked away in a safe.
And I was going to say, and realistically, I have my permits.
Mm-hmm.
I go down and get my little fingerprints and my yellow card, and I have everything tucked away with a trigger lock, and doesn't bother me.
Mm.
I would probably not be happy if you said you don't have the right to have that.
No.
Okay, but I'm not going to put it in the kitchen where my grandson can just walk up to it and play with it. So, you know, reasonable restrictions seem okay to me.
Sure, and I think there's a recognition among, I mean, we switched off to guns here, but, you know, it's a significant and controversial issue whenever it comes up, but I think there's a recognition that controlling access to weapons that are inherently dangerous by people who have issues, particularly mental health issues and emotional issues, is important. And so the gun owners, the true responsible gun owners will say just what you just said. I got the safe, got the trigger locks. It's not sitting in my closet.
It takes me 2 more days.
Nobody gets at that thing but me.
If it takes me 2 more days to buy it, then, I mean, I don't think I need one at noon today.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of that stuff. So it's you know, people always worry about the slippery slope, but it's you know, it's important that I be able to work with people in the community who are reasonable about that discussion. And my experience with the guys that I've dealt with in this area are they're responsible gun owners. They don't want people who shouldn't have access to guns to have it. They just don't want it to be so cumbersome that they can't get them either.
Right.
And so that's where we come to an understanding that the bill that came out had to change dramatically, and it did. And you know, I thank these guys all every time I see them. So many
issues. You know, you get out to a lot of the square states, and you can't be a conservative if you don't answer the questions the right way. You know, and I got in trouble when they said gay, and I said, who cares? No, you're supposed to say bad. Well, why? You know, well, if a gay man moves next to you, it'll ruin your marriage. And I'm like, really? I never understood what my neighbor, I have good neighbors. I really don't care what they do in their house. As long as they don't come to my house and try and change me, I won't go to their house. So some of these issues just...
It's easy to be... It's easy for somebody that doesn't understand this business to be frightened by the loud voices on the fringe. It's really easy. You know, I got elected, I sort of bookended my career with 2 controversial civil rights votes. I would call them civil rights votes, the gay marriage vote and the transgender vote. And I was told in my first term, you can't vote in a way that's going to allow the gay marriage thing to stand. And I said, I can't vote in a way that isn't. And you're going to get murdered in your district if you do that. And I said, I guess I have to take that chance, and what I have to do is I have to explain to my district and the people in it why, from a pragmatic, reasonable, honorable, humanistic point of view, this is the right thing to do. I didn't have anybody run against me after I took that vote. The transgender thing.
But again, John, this whole gay marriage thing, are you telling me I have to be gay and be married?
No.
No. Okay. So then, if I choose not to, are you stopping me from not?
No, but you have to, no, but I think it's different than that. I mean, I do think that there are people out there, and it's not a majority, and it's not a fringe minority. There are people out there who hold very sincere beliefs that that shouldn't be allowed civilly in our society, that it's, you know, against religion or for some other reason not the appropriate thing to do. I respect that opinion, and I have to try to explain to them, as I do to everybody else, why I respectfully disagree. And it was no different with transgender. Again, I had to take a leadership position on that and compromise, find a compromise that was acceptable to what turned out to be a huge majority in both the House and Senate, and a compromise that was acceptable to the governor on how that bill should be written, by putting some things in that gave some comfort level and some safety levels to people who were concerned about certain things, and that was something I did. I had a flyer sent out against me in the middle of this thing, in my district only. You know, Fernandes is in favor of, you know, sex offenders being in bathrooms with little girls. And it's like, it didn't even register a blip. I got 11 inquiries on that thing, 6 of which said, you're doing the right thing, keep doing it. 3 of which said, what's this about? And when I got done telling them, they said, you're doing the right thing. And 2 of which criticized me for it. So it's kind of like, okay, I'll take that, because it is the right thing to do. And ultimately, I took the vote, I led the issue, and let's remember, before I decided I wasn't running, we were 2 weeks away from the nomination papers having to be put in, and nobody was running against me. So this idea that you have to be frightened by the fringe, it's just not real. On either side, believe me, I've been threatened by the progressive side too, in my term of office, for not doing certain things.
I guess I don't get it many times when, as I said, the people on the fringes that spout dogma scare me, both sides, because they're not open. I don't understand a lot of times all the issues. You know, you say, I don't want a sex offender in a bathroom with a little girl. Well, do I want a sex offender in a bathroom with a little boy?
Yeah.
You know, I've got to trust. And that's why I say from local elections, it's easier to say, is this guy like me? Is his head, is her head in the kind of the same spot I am? Because you're going to spend all this time doing your due diligence, having an informed opinion, and there's no way I'm going to be able to.
Right, and that's what happens on an issue like that, because, you know, even just the statement you just made, it's not about sex offenders being in the bathroom with a little boy or a little girl, and it's not about the discussion being that we're breaking ground here. We're the 18th state in the nation. I think it was Minnesota has had it for 30 years as a protected right. Others for 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, 5 years, whatever. Not a single issue anywhere in the country could be pointed to. So there are certain people who are just mean-spirited. That's a real small minority. But that other part of the minority that, as I described them, sincerely believe that this is going to be bad for our society, bad for our children, bad for religion, bad for all those things. They sincerely believe it. And I spend more time with them trying to talk through why I'm doing something, and why, although I'll never convince them I'm right, put in their minds why I think I'm doing the right thing on these things.
But I'm okay with the people that I walk into an area with a belief. If I keep my mind open and give you a chance to educate me, then I can make a decision. Do I stay with my current, or do I change because, okay, I didn't understand that. That's okay to me.
Yeah.
Where I have a hard time is when somebody says no, the answer is no.
No, and you know what? We focus just on that discussion on the conservative side, but on the progressive side, the people who supported that bill in a particular form as it was filed and thought that any movement away from the language of the bill as it was filed was a sacrifice of civil rights were just as hard, if not harder, to get to the table, because I needed to hold on to their support and yet compromise that bill to give comfort to a whole bunch of moderate legislators and to folks in the governor's office that, you know, this was a good thing, you know. And the governor, I think, was very, I give him a tremendous amount of credit for taking a leadership role on that issue, particularly, as he's done on some others, that was nonpartisan and just, you know, what's the right thing to do. And you know, I think those fringes, the point, you know, we've gotten a bit off of course, but the point was that people can't be frightened by the loud voices. When we switch to this presidential election, my fear is, what I always used to think was, you know, a 30%, 25% fringe. I'm feeling like people in the 40s, I don't mean 40 years old, I mean percentages of 40 on either side are locking in that these people are really bad for our country. Not just I don't want them to be in power. If they're in power, they'll bring our government down. And these people are feeling the same way. You can't have a 20% middle right. and be successful in government. So I'm hoping when this election is over and people get to the holidays and come out of them, that there'll be an opportunity, whoever wins and however the majorities line up in Congress, that people will. We know they're not going to put it aside in Congress, but I'm hoping that in the public, some of that will recede.
Do you really think? I mean, when I moved to Paris, the conservatives were voted out, the socialists were voted in, and oh my God, the laws, the pendulum swung so far. It was frightening at the change. Whether Democrats or Republicans win, do you really think they can make that kind of change in our government?
You need a sea change for that to happen, and the numbers of people, because that's the difference between the parliamentary system and our system. Is typically in the parliamentary system you really do get a sweep and a whole new approach comes into place. But you know, my hope is just that we're still going to be in a tight mix no matter what the case is. There is still going to be serious disagreements that are going to bog them down in Washington, and I have no optimism that they're going to work it out. It's going to frustrate the heck out of the public. But I hope this sort of sense that has been sort of lifted up in this campaign, that somehow if that side wins or that side wins, the world's going to end in the next 60 days. I hope that when the sun keeps rising and setting and the world doesn't end, that people recognize that, yeah, we should ask our representatives, and I use that term with a small r, we should ask the people we've elected to work together and put pressure on them to do it, because the only way they're going to react in Washington
don't vote
is to put pressure on them.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to vote for you.
Yeah, it's
if you can't put aside your personal views and vote for what's best for your district, your town, your country, don't vote for them. I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to vote. God bless us. We have to vote. This thing of, well, I'll stay home. I'm sorry. That's a cop-out. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, you're going into this election, and it's the first time I really feel I have to hold my nose, because I'm not proud of either option to be my CEO. I want somebody out there who I can feel proud of, who's leading. Let's hope whoever takes over and whichever party controls the Senate and the House learns. This has been embarrassing. This is terrible.
Yeah, we'll see. Unfortunately, they don't seem to.
And that's the killer.
Yeah.
It's what do I have to do for the next 3 years or the next 6 years so that I can get elected again? And that's the hardest part for me to buy. I could never, I could never do it, because I'd vote my heart and probably not get reelected.
Well, I know a lot of people that do it the way they feel is right, and they still get reelected. But at the federal, and you know, we have some really good people, and that's one of the things you say is, why does he? You talk to Joe Kennedy for a while about the frustration, or Richie Neal, or you know, Jim McGovern. I mean, these guys, you know, they want to get down, they got great ideas, they want to do things. It's hard to get anything significant done legislatively, because you know, you're fighting these machines of, we need to control this thing and take it a different way. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So now,
I'd like to be hopeful.
10 years have gone by.
They have.
If I was to ask what was the most significant accomplishment, besides surviving 10 years, of a John Fernandes term?
Oh boy, you know, I don't know that I've even sat, this is one of the hard things, and it's sort of part of what I've always done, particularly given the nature of my law practice. My law practice is very transactional, And what that means is I don't really work on one thing for a long period of time. It's hard to do in a small law practice. I don't know how many small law practices will survive, you know, in the next 30 years. But and what I mean by that is I could go off and try a case for 3 days and win it and feel really good about it. And when I get back to the office, I'm going to have 3 days worth of people having tried to contact me to say, "What do you? Why isn't
like,
my
okay, hey,
why isn't my stuff taken care of?"
These two
so
people
it's like,
are not happy with
so
you.
So much for, you know, feeling good about that success. I better get my act back in gear here from all. So it's very transactional, and there's never been an opportunity for me to sit down and say, "Geez, that was a really good thing. And that's one of the best things I've ever done." And so even right up until now. I think if I was to look at this particular job and say, you know, what is the best kind of thing? Well, there's different parts to the job. So constituent work is a big part of it. And I won't pick out any one particular constituent that we've been able to help. But, you know, when somebody's unemployed and they can't get their benefits for 14 weeks and they finally pick up the phone and call, and within several hours to a day or two, you've got them their benefits, that's a pretty big deal, and you can go home at the end of the night feeling pretty good about that. And that can play itself out in a bunch of different ways. You know, I was talking to somebody the other day who had a problem with DOR, a small unemployment payment. I was a businessman, got mixed up with his account, and it didn't get paid. It got lost for a while. They come back, they start collecting, and of course, you know, what was $1,500 is $90,000 today, or what was $15,000 is 90, and it's like, I can't afford 90, and they're pushing and shoving, and we finally get somebody at DOR to take a solid look at it and listen, and the numbers change, and they say, yeah, well, okay, and when you can do things that help folks out who are in need, business people and others, it's really rewarding. So there's no one particular, but that part of the job has always been rewarding. You know, working with communities, you know, things like, you know, my dad and mom both worked in the factories, right? My dad was over at Draper's, my mom was over in the hat factories and the shoe factories, and at the end of the day, when my dad got done working the craziness in the foundry, he would go up to the machine shop at the corner and work 4 nights a week up there and on Saturdays to make some extra money. And you know, the one thing in the world they both wanted for my brother and I is we not go into factories and work in manufacturing.
I don't want you to work at Draper. Not that she didn't love Draper's. Yeah. She appreciated that they
fed the family.
Yeah.
They fed the family, but they were dangerous places at that time. And so manufacturing, which is what they were a part of, making things, making shoes, making hats, making looms, making clocks over at the Timex place. Those things, the cars, those things all disappeared through our lifetime because we were told don't go into these things. Well, in the last 4 or 5 years, I got into the manufacturing, the advanced manufacturing, the return. I was asked at a legislative breakfast where I happened to be one of 2 reps present, you know, our only ask from you as manufacturers is that you start a caucus. He said, no dollars? That sounds good. I go back to the speaker, he laughs, and he says, well, you know, I just had the Secretary of Economic Affairs in my office, literally, and he was bemoaning the fact we don't have a caucus. Let's put that together. Well, I found out that 3 days later at a manufacturing summit at Gillette Stadium, he announced we were going to have a manufacturing caucus in the House, and John Fernandes was going to lead it. It's like, I didn't ask to lead a manufacturing caucus, but the consequence of that was getting into it and preparing. I had no idea how significant manufacturing was in its return to the United States and in Massachusetts. And over the last 3 or 4 years, I've been able to work with those folks as a liaison inside the legislature to help get a lot of resources directed out.
But think about it. If your dad or my dad, God rest their souls, ever thought of a manufacturing job, bet you they didn't think
of what it is today.
Of $80,000 PhD in biochemistry being, or a $50,000 technician.
Yeah, a technician who doesn't have to have the PhD, who may get 60 or 70 within several years and works in a clean environment that's probably cleaner than my office because it has to be, you know, pristine clean because, you know, they're making medical devices and the rest. So, you know, I helped to seed a program where we, you know, get some training for folks and you know, I go to these graduations, they graduate 20 people every 8 weeks or so who are long-term unemployed older workers or long-term unemployed younger workers. And it's like 20 of them. And got invited to one because I was chairman of the manufacturing caucus, and I brought up some citations. These people couldn't have been happier to, one, have the training, two, most all of them had jobs already lined up or choices to make, and three, that I cared enough and other legislators cared enough to come up and spend that afternoon with them. But for me, it was taking back that I would say to them, you know, we've got an unemployment problem where it's not we have high unemployment, we have stubborn unemployment in certain places, and you guys are showing us we can break that cycle. But John, you are our example.
I'm going the other way, saying when I was running a clinical lab, I got an employment problem.
Right.
I can't find
biggest
qualified med techs, and
biggest problem in Massachusetts.
$55,000 right out of college. I mean, that to me is good money.
Well, you know, we would say to them, you know, when we would bring kids over to the schools, we would, from the schools to any one of these advanced manufacturers, waters, whoever one of the presentations is, and I remember the guy saying it, I'm parroting it, it was his line. He said, if you want to know how well the people who work here in manufacturing do, go out to the parking lot.
Look at the cars.
Look at the cars they're driving. You know, they're not driving.
They're not the cheapy,
you know, driving
Hyundai.
No, they're driving really nice cars because they can afford to drive really nice cars. And so we're trying to get more people to get into it, but trying to, you know, seed more money into the vocational education programs. I was able to work with the Blackstone Valley Education Foundation to get them $100,000 over a couple of years to link manufacturers with general high school kids, because we've now separated kids into the general high schools where there's no vocational, into the vocational where there's only vocational and some good education training, but they can't take everybody who wants to be in, and some of those kids never even think about going vocational. So we've set up this internship programs where kids get linked into big companies like EMC, small machine shops, and they get an opportunity to intern with them. And people have been hired through those internship programs.
That Mass Life Science Center, they have their internship challenge where I have to pay either $15 or $16 an hour to up to 2 interns for 12 weeks, and then the state reimburses me. Why wouldn't I take 2? And I've taken 2 every year. Typically take sophomores, because then the next year they roll in, they're already trained, they know everything. And if you think about it, when they roll out of Holy Cross, because typically they're Holy Cross kids, just a coincidence, but when they roll out of the Cross, they've got life experience that I don't know that a lot of companies could afford to do if the state wasn't reimbursing them. It's a wonderful program, and it also gives them a chance to experience working in a lab, working in a sales or marketing organization, to see if they like it.
Yeah, the truth is, in manufacturing today, we have enormous opportunities in Massachusetts. It represents a significant portion of our, there are 7,000 manufacturers in Massachusetts. They generate about 10% of our GDP.
The exports.
Yeah, and they employ about 250,000 people. Our unemployment rate's hovering in the 4. It used to be the 5% unemployment rate was effectively full employment, because some people just don't want to be in the market. But like I said before, we have this sort of stubborn unemployment among older workers, younger workers, displaced workers, and we have this situation where manufacturers are saying, we can't stay in Massachusetts if you can't get us some educated and trained workforce people, because we got to go someplace. And you've got the best people because they're the smartest, because of your school systems, and we want them, but they don't want to come to manufacturing. So we've been working together to invest so much in convincing general high school populations to not turn their back and nose on manufacturing. So you get a program like that, internship program, or I get the opportunity to do something like that training program, or Jeff Roy and I worked together to get Tri-County to bring manufacturing back as a program. They were scared, but we got them the money, grant money for the machinery, and now they want us to get the Mass State Building Association in, because they want to expand, and they need money to help expand the program. So you see things like that. To your point, what makes me feel good, what's a bigger, those kinds of things are just, when working with schools and businesses and folks like that, that's terrific. And and I go to the third part of it, which is legislation, And I've had the opportunity to work on some really good legislation over my 10 years, whether it's alimony reform or that gun bill or the EPA bill that we were able to get done, Dick and I. You know, the transgender bill, and there's a foreclosure bill I did. There's a number of pieces of legislation I've been able to work on over the 10 years, which I'm really just sometimes shocked that I got the opportunity to work with so many good pieces of legislation with so many good people who had an interest in those.
And again, when I think of the strategic programs, like investing in biotech manufacturing, yes, from an economical overview, it's, yeah, wait a minute. My son-in-law lives with my daughter a mile from me because he was able to get a job in the biotech industry. Yes, your strategic view is great, but most important, I kept my family together. You know, so when you look at some of the stuff you're investing in, it's great for the state overall, but when it trickles down, boy, you helped my family. He started as an intern at Harvard Bioscience. And after his internship, he stayed. You know, one of the last Holy Cross interns I had wouldn't leave, so we had to hire him. You know, so it's like, you keep the kids from the area. And I love the internship program because you have to either be going to a Massachusetts school or be a permanent Massachusetts resident. So the strategic value to the state really does trickle down and help. Silly as it sounds, me keep my family together.
There's no, and that's the way I've always sort of looked at this stuff, is that the bitter part about leaving is that, you know, as somebody who got hooked on government, you know, because of Robert Kennedy back in 1967, 68, and Martin Luther King and that whole thing, and switched into political science and ran for office at a young age and have participated in my law. You know, it's all about helping people to try and get out of something or improve themselves or improve something. It's really fulfilling to be doing these things, whether they feel large or feel small, but ultimately they have an impact on somebody. You know, they have an impact on people that I don't even realize they're having an impact on, but they do, and that's a really fulfilling piece of this. And it's never that I do anything that I've done over these 10 years alone. Nobody can work that system alone. Not even the speaker can work that system alone. It was his gun bill that we had to go in and fix because it wasn't going to pass. So nobody can do it in there alone. And it's just being able to collaborate with so many people over the years to do some, what I think are really good things. And sometimes I see the people who are affected by them and sometimes I don't. But it's nice. And you know, the flip side of it is, if you make a mistake, it can hurt people. So it's important to be thoughtful about this stuff.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons I'm glad you can't do it alone.
Yeah. Well, that's why we put this. They put this collaborative process,
you know,
and redundancy in place.
I don't want somebody from the far right driving through, or somebody from the far left. I like the idea that whether you like it or not, you got to work together. Because if you can't get that middle, you're never going to get anything passed.
Which is the story of our Congress for the last several terms, is that they won't work together, so nothing gets done.
So nothing gets done.
Which isn't helping our communities at all, but anyway.
So now, when you first came into office, we asked, how's it going to be that young John Fernandes, you know, you look back and you look at a Lou, you know, you look at people who were very experienced and had worked their way up and had a lot of pull. And you bring in a freshman. What advice are you going to give to the new freshman representative? Because they're starting from scratch just like you did 10 years ago.
Oh, I think it's important to focus on the things you can control, right? So part of the job is constituent work. You can control that. You get somebody good to work for you. Every day from the moment you step in as a new representative, there's going to be somebody that needs help. Go to work on it. Agencies will respond. They will each of them has a legislative liaison. They will respond to you and they will work with you. And as I said before, very fulfilling to get that done. Work with your communities. whether it's earmarks, you know, getting $50,000 for the youth center or Pheno Field, or, you know, helping the police department in Hopedale get new radios because they have dead spots. You can do that. You can do that as a freshman. You can. They'll help. You know, the leadership will help you with those things. They will help you to do things that will help your community. So work with your communities. Work with these agencies. And get involved in some of these other things, like the caucuses, like the manufacturing caucus or the special education caucus or some other caucus where you will learn things and have an opportunity to collaborate with people. Go to all of the hearings for the committees you sit on. People don't always do that. I went to every hearing for committees I sat on. Some people, you know, you have conflicts, you can't get in the city that day or whatever the case may be. Not everybody goes to every hearing. There would be nights where, when I was on the Judiciary Committee in the first year, and we were going from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight, it would be the chairman and myself sitting there. And my attitude was, particularly at those long hearings, if somebody's going to sit here from 1 o'clock to 11:30 to testify for 3 minutes, I think I got an obligation to sit and listen to what the heck they've got to say. That it's that important to them that they'll stay here for that many hours to talk to us. And if nobody's sitting there and they see maybe you start with 8 people or 10 people and, you know, a few hours later there's just a few people there. So you learn so much by going and listening. And then it's important to network, get to know the leadership, get to know your colleagues, find out what's important to people, what they're working on, and find issues that are important to you. You know, if you have certain particular interests, you can file legislation, you can get the handle on how the process works. And the other thing, it was advice I got, which is don't go comfortably and request that you serve on the committees you think you know everything about. That'll help you to be successful. No. So as a local person, well, you understand education because you sat on a school committee. You understand municipal finance because you sat on a selectman seat or something. No, you already know that. You don't need to go learn that. Ask to get on the transportation committee. Ask to get on the health care finance committee. Ask to get on elder affairs. Learn about the other things you don't know anything about. But networking, working your constituents, working with the communities, learning, filing legislation that you think is important, try to move that legislation forward, learn how that works, get to understand, listen to what people tell you, because you're stepping onto a, you know, an escalator or a treadmill that's been going. Everybody else is in motion. Get into that motion and get a feel for it.
From all of us who you've helped, I'll say thank you. Thank you for being a voice of moderation. Thank you for all you've done for Milford, Hopedale, Mendon, and that one street in Medway. What do you want to say to the voters who've kept you employed for 10 years?
What I want to say to the people of the community that, particularly Milford, that I've represented in various capacities since I was 20 years old, and who have been kind to me in my law practice and to my family in so many different ways, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have served, and for collaborating and working with me over all those years and trusting me. It's been a pleasure.
I don't believe we've seen the end. No longer young John Fernandes, but after 10 years, we look forward to seeing the next chapter.
And there will be a next chapter.
Yeah, because Jen won't let you sit home. She'll throw you out to do something.
No, I feel too good with too much energy in me to say that I'm done with either government or that I'm certainly not done with the law. My practice will continue, and there are more things I want to do in the public area. Just got to find the right thing.
So, as always, get out, get to know our representatives, reach out to them, Senate, House, national, learn, but most important than anything, vote. Pick the person who you believe will best represent your views, get out and vote. So as always, may God bless, may tomorrow be a better night than tonight, and again, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life